Hello everyone, welcome to my studio. We are doing a very different video today. It's rainy outside, and while rainy days are lovely and beautiful, we're gonna spend some time here in the studio and I'm gonna rank all of the plants that I have in my garden. So I'm not sure if you like tier videos as much as I do. I'm a big fan of them. And so we're gonna spend some time talking about all the different plants that I have and whether I rank them here as S tier or all the way down to D tier. S tier is going to be reserved for those plants that I highly recommend to everybody. I will absolutely have in my garden every year. They are the cream of the crop, for lack of a better term, no pun intended. And then as we go down, A tier are going to be those ones that, I'll probably have every year. I've enjoyed growing them. I find that they're easy. I find that they're, somewhat pest resistant to my area. They thrive in my area. And by the way, I am in zone 6A here in the Midwest. B tier is going to be middle of the road for us. Okay, so B tier is, hey, it's pretty good. Probably will have it some years I may not. If I have the extra space, I may have it. Kind of middle of the road tier for us. C is going to be, man, if I got this plant for free, I'd probably throw it in the garden just to see what happens. But I'm definitely not going out of my way to do anything, with the C tier plant. And D tier for this ranking is you could give me this thing for free and I wouldn't plant it. So we'll see. This is going to be completely off the top of my head. I haven't gone through these. I don't have a tier in mind, but we are going to see how we do here. So let's just dive right in. Okay, so first and foremost, or number one here, we're going to talk about blueberries. And blueberries, I'm actually going to put at B tier. Okay. I love my blueberries. I have 2 of them, but there's some things to note about blueberries. Number one, they take a really long time to actually start producing. So, if you are an impatient gardener, which I actually do have patience in the garden, but if you're an impatient gardener, blueberries are going to be a challenge for you because it might take 3, 4, 5, 6 years plus for your blueberries to produce. Now, the benefit and why it's not lower is that when they do start producing, they come back each year, and blueberries are amazing. Who doesn't love blueberries, right? So blueberries will be a B tier. The reason why it's not higher as well is, at least in my garden, I have a really hard time keeping pests away from blueberries. So for instance, this year, one of my blueberry bushes had, I want to say 6, 7 blueberries on it, something like that. And immediately when those things started to turn blue, the chipmunks came or the squirrels came, I don't know what it was, and they picked them all off. So I need to really have a high yield of these on each bush for any of them to even last the pests. So there you go. Blueberries are B tier. Okay, let's talk about oregano. I'm going to put oregano at a C tier. I have 2 different varieties of oregano in my back part of the garden. And by the way, if you want to see any of these plants, I have a garden tour video on my channel that you can watch. I uploaded it not too long ago. Highly recommend you do that so that way you can get a visual to what I'm talking about here. But in terms of the oregano, it's good, it's nice. I'm realizing that I'm not an herb gardener. All right, I go out there every once in a while, I'm cooking, I'll grab some of it, but I'm not as motivated or judicious when it comes to picking them, drying them, or going back there and using them on a daily basis. And the thing about some of the herbs that you're going to see on this list is they are perennials, number one, so they come back each year, so they take a good portion of the minimal garden space that I have, and they spread, they get big. So, these plants, these herbs that I don't really use a lot of that smell fantastic, I will give you that, but they take up a lot of real estate. One thing I will say with some of the herbs, and I haven't verified this, but I feel as though they do act somewhat as a pest deterrent. The oregano, I have mint here that we're going to get to in a little bit, so that kind of keeps it from a D tier. Maybe I should pop it up a little bit higher than it is, but for now, we're going to leave this as a C tier plant. Okay, we're going to go with the curly fox, I believe it's called. And this is a natural, or this is a grass, right? This is a grass. Now, this is planted in my native garden. It is native to my area, which I really like. I'm putting this at B tier because it is just grass, right? Like it doesn't flower per se. It's kind of a space filler, but I'll tell you this grass, it almost looks like it has a hollow, I don't want to call it a stem, but it's almost hollow. It's almost reed-like. And the color is really unique because it is that kind of really deep brown, almost orange color, and the tops, as it grows, start to curl. So I really like it. I actually would plant this again, and I would plant it in higher volumes because it's a really nice accent to some of the other greenery that you might have in a native garden. Okay, let's talk about blackberries. Blackberries, man, I'm really thinking about this. It's either going to be an S tier or an A tier. I'm going to leave it at A tier for now. I love blackberries. They do have a little bit of a learning curve because you have the primocane, the florocanes. You need to know how to manage this plant in terms of pruning. You also have to be you really have to fight the pests on this one. You really have to buy netting, and I mean, it's funny, I was actually watching the blackberry plant the other day, and there's not very many ripe berries on there anymore, but I saw a chipmunk literally crawl up a cane to the top, cheek a blackberry, and run away. And it's like, man, that's really discouraging. So the pests love the blackberries, but you can kind of remedy that with nests. I love this though because you get blackberries every year, and having a perennial fruit in the Midwest like this is just super, super cool. My kids love it. I love going out there and grabbing a nice warm blackberry while I'm doing yard work or doing work in the garden. So for now, blackberry is going to be A tier. Okay, let's talk about mint. Mint for me is going to be my first D tier. Whoops, let's pull that back down. So I planted mint next to my oregano, thinking that I would really, like I said, spend a lot of time on the herbs and using the herbs, and I just don't. And the thing about mint is I planted it in the ground. I think it acts as a pest deterrent, so I'll give it that. I know for certain it smells really great when I walk on pieces of it or something like that. However, it just takes over everything, and I find that I don't use it nearly as often as I should. So I'm actually going to try to spend some time getting the mint out of my garden this next coming season. But we're going to put mint at D tier. And I will caution you, if you love mint, great, plant it. It's awesome. If you like it. But make sure you're planting it in a space where you don't care if it really spreads, because it will absolutely spread, and you don't want it filling up a bunch of space that you plan on planting other things. Okay, let's talk about peonies. This is something that I planted a while ago, and I planted it before I was just going to go with native species, right? So I'm not going to pull it up just because it's not a native species to my area. I'm putting this at B tier because, number one, they're perennials and they last a very, very long time. I love perennials. As a matter of fact, I primarily only plant perennials because I love doing the work, and then I love reaping the benefit of that every year. Annuals are great, like things like tomatoes. It's great, you plant it, you get it every year, but perennials are just kind of special. I also love the act of pruning things, right? And kind of building a relationship with the plant over the years, as odd as that might sound. So anyways, I'm rabbit trailing here. Perennials are great, peonies are great because they come back every year. They're very hardy, and when you get them to the point of flowering, which can usually take a season or two, the flowers are absolutely gorgeous. So I have, I want to say 8 peony plants planted around the edges of my yard. I really like them. They're almost an A tier plant. The only reason I'm not putting it in A tier is because, number one, it's not native to my area, and number two, I didn't get very many peony flowers this year because I planted them very late in the summer last year. So this might bump up to an A if we do this on a yearly basis next year when I get lots of flowers. Okay, let's do strawberries. Strawberries to me are going to be my first S tier plant. Okay, in my back garden, and again, watch the YouTube video if you want to see what I'm talking about, my garden tour video. I planted strawberries, and I only bought, I want to say it was 4 or 5 plants from the nursery, and this was maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And I planted those, and I gave them plenty of space. I knew they spread out a little bit. I did not realize how hardy these strawberries would be. They have taken over probably a 15 by 6 foot plot just from those original plants, and they continue to spread. They continue to produce every year. I absolutely love them. They're hardy. They come back reliably. they multiply, like everything that I really look for. Their fruits, they're sweet, everything I look for in a plant that produces something to eat. Strawberries checks the mark for me. Now, the only thing that I need to get better at and that you really have to be cognizant of is pests. As much as I love strawberries, it seems as though all the pests around me do as well. So the chipmunks, the slugs, the squirrels, the birds, the pill bugs, they all love strawberries. So this coming year, I'm going to do some additional things. And again, there's a video recording of how I remedied some of those. Another video I posted on my channel, but there's some things I'm gonna do in additional next year to hopefully get a better harvest that the bugs don't steal most of. But strawberries, my first S-tier plant in the garden. Okay, going to another one here. Butternut squash. Okay, I would put butternut squash as S-tier, except 2 reasons. They grow like crazy. So I bought some of these from the nursery, and I thought that I would be able to fit some in a certain amount of space, and boy, was I wrong. So, for me, someone that has limited space, that makes it an A tier. I absolutely want to grow these every year. I think they're awesome. They look really cool. But for me, it takes up a lot of real estate for the limited space that I have. Number 2, there are a lot of pests. The vine borer bug and the squash beetle, I want to say, if I'm correct. So I'm just learning about this. It's my first year growing butternut squash. But if you get a bad batch of those things, if you have a lot of those in your garden, it pretty much kills everything that you got going with the butternut squash. And there's almost nothing you can do about it, which is very unfortunate. So, especially for organic gardening. So really what I have to do is I have to go out to the garden. I have to look at it daily. I have to look for those bugs. And if I see them, I have to kill them by hand. And if they get in that right spot, especially that vine borer, it's going to take out my whole lot of that. So, but butternut squash, very cool. Something that produces vegetable or fruit of the plant that you can really keep all winter long if you preserve it and store it the right way. And that's really cool to me. Okay, moving on to the next one. This is a blazing star. This is a flower. And I'm going to put this at B tier. This was one of the selections I put in my yard for my native garden. It's really cool. It has these pom-poms. They're perennials, so it'll be back every year. They look really, really great when they're in full bloom, but they're not in full bloom for very long. And then they kind of wilt over, at least mine have. They kind of wilt over and look just so-so. So that being said, they're native. They attract pollinators, which I'm big on. They're not the largest attractor of pollinators that I have in my garden. We'll get to some of those here in a minute. But I definitely like it, and it's really easy upkeep, and they look really cool when they are in full bloom. Okay, and up next we have the trumpet flower vine. And I personally, for my space, am going to put this in A tier. The reason why I have it in A tier is because I built an arch trellis that goes over a walking path that this is growing up on top of. And this is a perennial, it's hardy, it has a woody stem. When it's weaving in and out of that framework that I've built for it, it's really gonna lock in and stay there and really show off year after year, which I think is really cool. It was always a dream of mine to have an arch trellis that has some sort of flowering or some sort of vine that goes over it. And this is exactly that. And these flowers are great pollinator attractors, and they're attractors to hummingbirds as well, which is super cool. They look like a trumpet, and they're bright yellow in the variety that I got. So I'm gonna put this as A tier. It's one of those things that's super, super easy. It looks super, super cool. It's a great aesthetic for my yard that I really like. So it is going to A tier. All right, the next one that we have is called tick seed, actually. And tick seed is going to be an A tier plant. This was really small when I got it from the nursery, and it has absolutely exploded. And right now, and we are in mid-July, mid-July, and it is just so heavy with flowers. There's so many flowers that this has grown this year, and it of course is a perennial. So I'm gonna have those every single year. It's really filled up my native garden space. The flowers look amazing. They have this like red sunburst that kind of comes out, and it's a pollinator attractor, which I love. It's native to my area. So this tick seed is absolutely an A tier plant for me. And next we're gonna go to the anise hyssop. the anise hyssop is going to be an A tier plant for me as well. Everything that I said about the tick seed, very similar, except that it just has this really unique, almost trumpet, fuzzy flower texture to it. I don't really know how to describe it, but it's been producing color for a really long period of time, which to me is really cool. Some of the reason why I don't like some of the other flowers that I have in my garden is because it produces these colors, it's beautiful, and then it goes away in a couple weeks. Something like the anise hyssop has been producing for months and months and months, and I like that. It's very low maintenance, it's a perennial, it's a huge pollinator attractor as well. It's something that I'll probably will plant more of next year in my native garden in the front of my house. So definitely A tier for the anise hyssop. Okay, black-eyed Susans. Black-eyed Susans are, for me, an A tier plant. They are kind of a staple in my area, native to the area, like I said. They look great, and they look great for a very long time. They look like mini sunflowers, I always say. I love the color. They're very hardy. They actually spread a little bit. They take up a lot of space in a good way. They look very good. So to me, Black-eyed Susan, yet another A tier plant. I'm going to go with, so this is the dwarf Black-eyed Susan. So I got two varieties. I got the full size, it's a good size. I want to say maybe a couple feet that it grows tall. And then I have the dwarf plant that only grows maybe a foot tall off the ground. Both are great. I would plant both again, and I probably will. But I'm putting the dwarf as a B tier because I just like the full size better. So it just like the height. I think it looks better. Okay, moving on to the evening primrose. Evening primrose is going to be a B tier plant. Okay, it is. Yeah, you know what? I think the evening primrose is going to be a C tier plant for me, actually. So it looks really cool. It's a lower kind of ground cover plant, at least the variety that I got. The flowers are beautiful, but the flowers are very finicky. They blossom and then they die very quickly. At least they have for me this year. It seems like they're a little bit sensitive to heat. I'm not sure. Again, that could just be this year, the variety that I got. I would plant it in the garden again, but I certainly won't be going out looking to buy more of it to plant. Like I said, the qualifier for this tier is, if somebody gave it to me, would I throw it in my garden? Sure, absolutely I would. But again, just not as magnificent as some of these other flowers that I have in my garden. So we're gonna throw the evening primrose in C tier. Okay, I'm calling this the eyelash grass. I'm not sure the exact name, but it's a grass that has little eyelashes that it looks like it produces at the top of it. So they kind of hang, and looks like eyelash things that hang down. So I like it. It looks really, really intriguing. It's a unique thing to go show someone and say, hey, look, it's the eyelash plant. I like native grasses more than I thought I would. I'll probably plant more of this next year. It's a really great space filler to go with all of the other things that you have in a native garden if you're in my area here in the Midwest. So I'm gonna throw that in B tier. And yeah, I really like the eyelash grass plant. Okay, this may be my first controversial pick here. I'm gonna throw tomatoes into C tier, and here's why. I've historically grown tomatoes, and it could be my soil, it could be the pests that I have in this particular neighborhood that I'm in, because I've grown tomatoes with success in previous places. But I have the hardest time growing tomatoes. I have the hardest time keeping them from disease. I have the hardest time keeping them from pests. I have the hardest time getting the soil composition right to where they're actually fruiting properly. And here's the thing, I love tomatoes. If I get better, when I get better at growing tomatoes, I absolutely will move this up to a B or an A tier. Tomatoes are awesome. There's nothing better than going to pick a fresh tomato, slicing that thing open and eating it. Love it, grew up doing that. But for me, just over the past few years, I've spent so much time and given so much real estate to growing tomatoes with nothing to show for it, or hardly anything to show for it at the end or during the season. So for me, first maybe controversial one here, selection, tomatoes will be in C tier, and I would love to hear from the gardeners listening. Are tomatoes, where would it rank for you? Have you guys had success for tomatoes? Are they a staple in your garden, or are you giving up, or have you given up on those darn things? All right, moving on. We are gonna go with grapes. and I am going to put this at S tier. So there are grapes that are native to my area. Those are the selections that I believe that I picked for my garden, but I've never grown grapes before. I'm very green when it comes to that. But I'll tell you one thing, grapes look really cool when they grow. First and foremost, you grow them on trellises. You can grow them around an arch, pathway or a pathway cover like I have in my garden. And it's really cool because not many people grow grapes. So when you have people over and you tell them that you're growing grapes, they think it's very, very cool. It's very unique. Me personally, I've never even tasted a grape that's fresh off from picking, right? Fresh off of the vine before. I've only had ones from the grocery store. So for me, being able to grow it is a conglomeration of all those things. It's just a joy, and it looks really cool. Now, grapes can be a little finicky when it comes to pest protection, right? So pests love grapes. From what I hear, birds love grapes. I'm sure my chipmunks will love grapes. And you really have to know how to prune them. Similar to the blackberry, and I don't know if the terminology is the same, but there are primocanes and florocanes, kind of. The vines that grow one year are the ones that will produce the fruit the next year. And then after those vines produce fruit, you need to get rid of them and then let the next year's previous. It's a little complicated, okay? But you just have to know that. You have to study that. Growing grapes, to me, is kind of an art form. It's almost like if you were to maintain a bonsai tree, right? It has some tendencies to that, and I really like that. So anyways, long story short, grapes are S tier for me along with strawberries. And we're going to come to another S tier selection, milkweed. And I believe I have a variety of milkweed called swamp milkweed. So if you're interested in searching it, you absolutely can do that by searching swamp milkweed. This is a staple to my area. It's native. It's a giant pollinator attractor. I've seen on one plant 50 bees at the same time. I've seen butterflies. I just think it's an amazing plant that has a sweet scent that fills up a space, looks fantastic, lasts all season, super hardy, and you don't have to do much to it. I planted it, it grew, and it's done all of those things. So I can't say enough great things. I want to plant more milkweed next year in the native garden portion of my yard. Very, very highly suggest. My grammar's really good today. The milkweed in your garden. And then lastly, we are going with jalapeno peppers. That's going to be an A tier selection. And with jalapeno peppers, I'm going to actually even add hot peppers in general. I love growing hot peppers, especially where I'm at. It gets very, very hot later in the summer, late June, August. Hot peppers love that. The pests tend to stay away from hot peppers. They don't like eating those things. And me and my wife love eating hot peppers. We love making hot sauces and putting them in salsas and cutting them up raw and eating them with things like rice and veggies. And we just love spicy peppers. So this is a staple in my garden. I grow them absolutely every year, usually multiple varieties. And I would suggest you too, if you like spicy food, you want something hearty that's more than likely going to produce well for you, hot peppers of really any variety that I've seen have done very, very well. So this was fun. Looks like we have 3 S tier plants, a good majority falling in A and B. Shocker, because that's what I've selected for my garden. And then a few lessons learned, right? C and D, kind of the shocker for most of you. The shocker for me is the old tomato plant. Maybe I can get better at that and get that up a tier, but I really appreciate you joining me with this. Hopefully you had fun listening in, watching in, and we will talk very soon.